Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The session will begin in 1 minute.
السيدات والسادة الكرام، تفضلوا بالجلوس في مقاعدكم. ستبدأ الجلسة خلال دقيقة واحدة.
بلغ المكاسدنا فاغفر لنا ما مضى يا وسيع الكرم. بلغ المكاسدنا فاغفر لنا ما مضى يا وسيع الكرم. في دار الوفاة سدنا فاغفر لنا ما مضى يا وسيع الكرم. يمتم ومغوي بلغ مكاسدنا فاغفر لنا ما مضى يا واسع الكرم Bekorende rakombo wenzuani Bekorende rakombo weye masiwa Kokorende mama Kokorende rakombo wenzuani Kokorende rakombo weye masiwa iyo Lambesha hidalil wafat swidanat faghfir lana mama waya wasi'al karami mtumwa mgwe baligh maka swidana faghfir lana mama waya wasi'al karami alafu le jeshi la Komori na la limembatse na majimbi wa huyo wanansi no wambao na wende waloweze mfi na pwere yemstiri mambo kabo wambao na wende walimembatse na majimbi wa huyo wanansi no wambao na wende waloweze mfi na pwere yemstiri mambo lelo dalilo wafat swidanat faghfir lana mama waya wasi'al karami mtumwa mgwe baligh maka swidana faghfir lana mama waya wasi'al karami Kombo weye masiwa Bekorende rakombo wenzuani Bekorende rakombo weye masiwa Kokorende mama Kokorende rakombo wenzuani Kokorende rakombo weye masiwa iyo haki ya Wakomori wakombo wenzuani iyo lelo haki ya hele jeshi la libere ye masiwa ewe Bekorende rakombo wenzuani Bekorende rakombo weye masiwa iyo lambe na rakombo weye masiwa On était si gai, il y avait plein de papillons, il y avait plein d'oiseaux qui chantaient. Il n'y avait pas de goudron, il n'y avait pas de béton. Où que ce soit si malheureux, où que ce soit soyons heureux. À Moroni, le vendredi, les mendiants en file indienne parcouraient la Médina pour une pièce de 5 francs. Le partage si naturel permettait aux gens de s'aimer. C'était le temps du respect des hommes de bonne volonté. Merci, merci, merci. Merci, merci, merci beaucoup. Merci, merci, merci. Merci, merci, merci beaucoup. Tous se dégradent, les ordures dans les ruelles. Hommes et rats habitent ensemble et pour tous c'est le ras-le-bol. À présent tout se dégrade, les ordures dans les ruelles. Hommes et rats habitent ensemble et pour tous c'est le ras-le-bol. Les odeurs de la forêt sont parties de mon quartier. Tous ces fruits que l'on cueillait, aujourd'hui il faut payer. À midi comme à minuit, toi tu n'as qu'à frapper à la porte. Il suffit que tu choisisses ta mansarde ou ton réon. Et merci.
Merci, merci.
Yalé, yalé, la volée. Non, 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 merci. Yalé, yalé, la volée. Marahaba menji menji, marahaba menji mwezi Mungu. Misota sota tupe, misota tupe sana hari. Marahaba, marahaba menji mwezi Mungu. Asante, asante sana. Asante, asante sana amor. Merci. Ningependa niwoneshe mwima mzito, mwana ulivyojihafilisha, aye damu yenda mbio. Ulimwengu na shida, akiba zimevuja, wasiwasi umezidi, hey Mola tusamehe. Naomba wana wote wa duniani tushikane, tuheshimiane, tuelewane bila ya kurusha mizinga. Tumjue Mungu namna Adam na Hawa walivyokuja. Sisi ni ni wadogo, kwa hivyo mwangaza ukija macho yaone sawa sawa. Akil, makil, bila bila ugomvi. Huku hawa wanapigana badali ya kupendana, wengine wanadai nafasi ya ubinadamu. Tamaa zetu tuko nazo, lazima situpewe nafasi tujieleze. Naomba wana wote wa duniani tushikane, tuheshimiane, tuelewane bila ya kurusha mizinga. Tumjue Mungu namna Adam na Hawa walivyokuja. Sisi ni wadogo, kwa hivyo mwangaza ukija macho yaone sawa sawa. Akil, makil, akil, makil, bila bila ugomvi. Ugomvi, bila bila ugomvi. Ulimwengu una shida, akiba zimevuja, wasiwasi umezidi. Ai wana shida, akili zinavuja, wasiwasi umezidi kwa leo. Lelo ulimwengu wetu, ulimwengu wetu, sote tuna shida. Dawa yetu ni umoja na kupenda ili unipende jamani. Dunia lelo 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 lelo, ulimwengu wetu. Ulimwengu una shida, akiba zimevuja, wasiwasi umezidi. Ulimwengu wetu, ulimwengu wetu. Ugomvi, bila bila ugomvi. Lelo 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 lelo, bila ugomvi, bila bila kweli. Lelo 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 lelo, bila ugomvi, bila bila ugomvi. Merci, thank you.
Test. Is it on? Can you hear me okay? Right. Wow, that was an amazing start to this event. Thank you, Malish, for such wonderful music. It's really energizing to start off a day like this with that kind of inspiration. So, and to continue the inspiration, we have a really interesting series of sessions for you today. So my name's Tanzid Alam. I'm your moderator for the day, and you'll hear my voice a few times, but the main point is to hear the voices of the excellent speakers that we have today. We have a panel discussion at first, and the theme of the day is about the Indian Ocean, our shared heritage, and for a sustainable future. Now, obviously it was World Water Day yesterday, so Expo is celebrating the theme of water, and water is absolutely crucial to life on Earth. We are on a blue planet, which provides us with resources that we're very fortunate to to have in our lives, and to be able to live prosperous lifestyles and grow our economies and so on. And then, and we have various events taking place during Expo this week as well. So as you know, the ocean covers 2/3 of our planet. For those of you who live in this region as well, hands up quickly, who lives in this region? Great. Well, we rely on seawater for our drinking water. It's desalinated to provide us with clean water to live. So we are very much, our lives are very much dependent on the ocean and the seas being healthy here. So, but globally, oceans provide food, livelihoods for fisheries. 200 million people around the world live on, rely on fisheries that the ocean has kind of the resources around. It adds $3 trillion per year to the global economy. There's a stat, I think it was the OECD mentioned, that if the ocean, the global ocean was a country, it would be the 7th largest country in the world. So, and this is the kind of thing that's a shared resource that can be easy to take for granted. When it's a common good, my background's in conservation, but Garrett Hardin said he wrote a book called The Tragedy of the Commons. And the tragedy of the commons is, for a common good, it's very easy to take it for granted and exploit it with your own self-interest, but not thinking about the common interest. And that resource is being depleted, unfortunately. So, whether it faces threats from climate change or exploitation of resources or pollution, the ocean is something that provides huge value to to man and humankind. So, but there are also really practical solutions out there that are being trialed and tested around the world, and especially in the Indian Ocean, which is really crucial because it connects continents of Africa with Asia and also Australia, as well, as I was learning today, which is a really important, the Indo-Pacific region for trade, commerce, and so on. And 2.5 billion people rely on the Indian Ocean, the countries that border the Indian Ocean. So we have some really good speakers here today. So firstly, I would like to introduce this first session. It's called Creating the Ocean We Want. We have Dr. Matt van der Clift, who's the director of IORA, the Blue Carbon Hub, and he's joining us virtually from Perth, Western Australia. I don't know what time it is for Matt today, but he'll join us. We also have Mr. Randall Mabwa, who is the Regional Communications Officer for Blue Ventures East Africa, and Miss Natalia Lowen from the Seychelles, Ocean and Climate Youth Ambassador for the Peace Boat. So if you could both, Randall and Natalia, please join me on stage. Thank you. So we'll have, so this will be a panel discussion where I will ask a few questions, a few introductory remarks, and then we'll move on to the next session as well. So I'd like to start first with Dr. Matt. Matt, nice to see you. I like your background, very green. So could you talk to us a little bit about who IORA is and what you do there in using mangroves and coastal ecosystems and nature-based solutions? So over to you, Matt. Oh, I don't think we can hear Matt. Did you hear me, Matt, when I asked the question? Hi, Matt. Did you hear my question?
I heard your question. Can you hear my reply?
I can, but there's an echo, and that's very disconcerting. Sorry, just bear with us. I think the team are just figuring it out. You could give me a thumbs up when you feel it's sorted. It seems okay now that I don't hear an echo now. Great.
How's that?
All right. Okay, take two, Matt. So talk to us a little bit more about IORA and what you do there on mangroves and coastal ecosystems and the collaborative nature of the initiative that you have working with people from around the Indian Ocean, governments, NGOs, and so on.
Oh, and hello, everyone. Was here. Just checking the audio works for you now. You can hear it clearly.
We could hear. That's clear. That's fine. Yep.
Excellent. All right. Well, I'll go ahead. So, really pleased to be here and really pleased to represent the Carbon Hub and the work we're doing around the ocean. I'm a coastal ecologist. I've been working on and in coastal ecosystems like the one behind me, which is a seagrass meadow from the Seychelles, which I thought was appropriate. I've been doing that for a few decades, and one thing that I've observed during those few decades is that there's been quite a lot of change. We've got in the Indian Ocean, we've got these wonderful assets. We've got mangrove forests, almost half the world's mangrove forests in the Indian Ocean. We've got seagrass meadows, we've got coral reefs, we've got all these wonderful natural assets, but they're changing. We might not be looking after them quite the way it could be. I've picked up quite a few changes, and so the work we're doing through the Carbon Hub sets out to try and reverse some of those changes. First of all, recognise that there is change, reverse some of those changes. It turns out that if we do that and we do it well, we can actually use that as what we call a nature-based solution to deal with some of the world's biggest issues. So I'm talking about things like climate change mitigation. I'm talking about things like supporting livelihoods of people involved in protecting coasts that are eroding during this extreme event. So those are the sorts of things that we're trying to do.
Excellent. Thank you, Matt. And we'll go back to some of these themes if we have a bit more time in this session. Now, Randall, you're doing some really interesting work with Blue Ventures on mangrove conservation projects. Can you explain a bit more about, I know you'll be speaking about one of these specifically in the next session. Can you talk more generally about the work that you do at Blue Ventures on mangrove conservation and your community-based approach?
Thanks, Tanzid. Hi, everybody. My name is Randall Mabwa. I am a marine biologist, science communicator, and conservation practitioner, and I work for Blue Ventures Conservation. We are a marine conservation NGO, a charity, not for profit, and we support communities to rebuild their fisheries as a primary intervention, and also support communities to restore ocean life and while advocating for community-led conservation practices. So putting that community voice first. In summary.
Great, good to know. Thanks, Randall.
Thank you.
And Natalia, can you talk a bit more about your role? I mean, we had a fascinating chat earlier. And by the way, before Natalia speaks, it was her birthday yesterday, and she's 21. So I think we need to give her a quick round of applause because it is her birthday. Thank you. I don't mean to embarrass you, but I think it's worthy of applause.
Not at all. Thank you
from the
very
audience.
much. Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Natalia Lauen. I'm from Seychelles. I have done a lot of work towards SDG 14. It was actually me and my sister and a bunch of incredible people from Seychelles. I've led numerous beach cleanups and have lobbied and campaigned the government of Seychelles for a plastic ban in Seychelles. I'm currently studying economics and climate change, and in 2019, all of my efforts towards protecting the environment and the ocean led me towards applying for the Ocean and Climate Youth Ambassador Program on board Peace Boat, which made me the third Ocean and Climate Youth Ambassador from Seychelles on board Peace Boats. I'm very thrilled to be here, so thank you for inviting me.
Excellent. Welcome, Natalia, and welcome, everyone. So, Natalia, while you have the mic, I'd like to ask you the first question. So, you obviously, the world is facing a lot of challenges when it comes to oceans and climate change. From your experience, what is the key to engaging youth on these topics?
I think the youth have a lot of bright ideas, and we often think outside the box. I think everybody has a gift, and everybody is born with a special gift. We're not all born to do the same things and to think the same way. And I think if we put a group of people, then we'll have numerous talents from all over the place and we'll have numerous skills. So just having a group of people, especially young people, to give them the opportunity to do something, that is a great way of engaging people. As well, I think a lot of young people want to make a difference and they want to change the world and they have a lot of bright ideas. The problem is that we just do not have the opportunity to do it. And I think that if the youth is given the opportunity to do it, we can really change the world. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Natalia. And we'll pick up some of these themes in a bit as well. Matt, I'd like to ask you the next question, if I may. You do a lot of work in the region. What do you see as some of the biggest challenges towards implementing nature-based solutions at the moment in the Indian Ocean region?
One of the biggest challenges is just developing the understanding of what's possible. I think too often we default to just the status quo, a little bit like the Panelists talked about. We're doing the same things in the same way and we're not changing, we're not implementing those new ideas. It's not because we don't know how. We do know how, but we need to get the right decisions made in the right places at the right time to really start reversing those perverse actions that seem to be dominant and changing slowly, but still prevailing at the moment.
And related to that, what do you think, from your experience, what are the ways to overcome those challenges? What's worked?
I'm a scientist, so my starting position is always start with the best possible knowledge. We don't know everything, but we know a lot, and we certainly know enough to be making some better decisions. So we start with that knowledge, and then we start communicating that knowledge in fora like this, but also to decision makers in government, whether it be in business, in the private sector, the non-government, the not-for-profit sector has a lot to play. So really passing on that knowledge, helping support the informed decision making, and in the Indian Ocean especially, building up capacity all around the Indian Ocean. We have so much to offer the world, and really the Indian Ocean can be a leader in coastal sustainability. And we've just got to boost that capacity to do that a little bit further.
Great, thank you, Matt. I'm actually picking up on that theme of capacity, Randall. You're doing some really interesting work across, from Madagascar to Indonesia, where you're working with coastal communities. Can you explain a bit more about what your approach is for success?
Right. If you understand Swahili, the song that Malesh has just sung calls for unity among humans. We have problems and our solution is unity, if I'm right. So basically, for us to achieve success in conservation, you have to put communities first. You have to support them, and we have to come together on an all-inclusive platform for us to realize that, number one, communities have knowledge. It's indigenous knowledge. It's always been there. They've always used it in conservation. Once you realize that they have the rights to manage their resources, then that's a first step forward, and then giving them the support they need in terms of offering training to them to take part in management processes. And here we're talking about coastal conservation, fisheries management, and that kind of thing. And then empowering them, rather supporting them to get the skills to be part of the processes, whether it's research, as data collectors, so that they own the process. That is, I think, the only way, and if you want to achieve success with communities, if you want buy-in. Because if someone does not see the value of something, then they won't care about it. And if the same person has been using a particular resource, and you want to come down using a top-down approach, impose, let's say, a policy or a law on them, then it becomes hard for them to accept it. But if you involve them in the process, in decision-making, then they're part of it. And they'll take it upon themselves to lead the process. Yeah. So that leads to success.
Excellent, excellent. I'm looking forward to hearing more about that when you in the next session. But kind of building on this issue, it's really interesting you mentioned this kind of grassroots, community-led, you know, and it's easier said than done, isn't it? And so you mentioned when we were speaking before about social conservation rights. What do you mean by that? Can you explain what that means?
I mean, so the social conservation rights approach is where you actually realize that, hey, there's this community X or community Y, and this is their resource. Rather than you coming and imposing a certain policy or a certain regulation, you start to work with them, realizing that it's their right to the resource that you want to manage. They also have a right to the decision-making process, rather the regulation or the policy that you are coming up with as a policy maker, as a regulator. And that's when, once you realize that they have the rights to manage the resources, then you put them first. It's not nature and then people, it's people and then nature. That's why this is called a program for people and planet. It's the people. The people take care of the resources if you secure their rights. Yeah? So it's just putting them first. So the social conservation approach to, and it's a human rights-based approach to conservation. It's not a no, don't step here, don't take this, don't do that. It's more of, why don't we join hands together and conserve this or sustainably use this so that it's not depleted for tomorrow's progeny, or rather our children, you know. If you put that in people's minds, then it's easier for them to see, hey, if I'm going to secure this mangrove forest so that my children can have a better future tomorrow, so that we might take out or reduce carbon dioxide from the atmosphere so that my kids won't burn in the sun, or will try and keep the global warming under 1.5, then it's easier for, you know, them to see it's important because it affects them. Yeah. So when you realize the value, then it becomes different.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Is this something that resonates with you, Natalia?
Definitely.
Yeah?
One of the things that I think is lacking is education on the oceans. We know so much about terrestrial ecosystems, I think, in this current generation that we are living in, but so little about the ocean. Only 3% of the ocean is explored, and we only know only 3% of the ocean. So imagine if we knew more about that. And same with what Mr. Randall said. I think if people know the value, and that comes with education, if we get to explore the ocean more, and I mean explore, not exploit, the ocean more, then we will definitely know what it's worth. Because if we make the reference to somebody buying a new phone, a very expensive phone, we know the value of it, and we know that if we break it, it's very hard to get it back, and it's very expensive to get it back. It's the same thing with the ocean. It's a very fragile yet resourceful resource, and if we knew the value of it, we wouldn't treat it the way that we do because we knew the value of it. But I think that a lot of people do not know the value of the ocean, and so we take it for granted. People often think that if I don't live by the sea, or if I don't eat fish, or if I don't have a connection to the ocean, then it doesn't affect me because that's not my world. But the ocean alone provides 70% of the oxygen we breathe. That is 7 out of 10 breaths we take. So it's that vital. It doesn't matter where you are from the world, you are affected by the ocean. And the ocean has so many properties that it's not talked about. We don't learn about it in school. We learn about other resources, other things, and the ocean is often neglected, and its importance and value is often neglected. So I think with time, and I hope that in this ocean science decade, this comes around, that the future generation and the current generation knows more, and we can spread more awareness about the ocean, its value, and how it directly impacts you. Whether you live by the sea or you do not, whether you are a landlocked country or you are not, it affects you, and it affects every one of us. And I think people will only realize the importance and the value of the ocean once it's gone. I think that's human nature. That's when everybody realizes what you have. That's when it's gone. But I hope we never get to that, and I hope we can work towards protecting our oceans and protecting our environment and educating people so that we can do better, and we can do better for our children, we can do better for our grandchildren, and I hope that this generation is much more impactful.
Great, thank you. Very clearly said. And you mentioned the word value a few times, and I'd like to bring you, Matt, into this point as well. When we talk about the value of oceans, is it just about putting a dollar figure on it, or is it more than that? What do you think?
Yes, for me, it's value is something much, much more profound. Yes, there is a certain economic value to be associated with ecosystems. We can catch a fish from the system, and we can sell that fish, and we can get the dollar value, if you like, of what that fish is worth in the market. But there's so much more that we get from the oceans, which has a much more deeper value. So the analogy I like to use in this context is, how do you value a friendship? Can you buy a friend? You can't buy a friend. If you try to buy a friend, you change the very nature of what a friend is. So the ocean to me is like that. You can't buy it, you can't sell it. Its value is much, much more profound. And if you try too hard to put a dollar value on it, you'll actually change the nature of what it is.
Yeah, and I asked that question kind of provocatively in the sense that value is more than just putting a dollar value on it, but the world, and we talks about development and growth and the GDP growth opportunities to value resources that we exploit, and livelihoods are based on that. I'd like to, we've got a kind of 8 minutes left, but I'd like to, if you're comfortable with this, I'd like to explore this theme a bit about how do we create this debate around what the value is that our oceans provide? There's softer aspects, there's spiritual aspects of ocean and value, and we'll hear later on about the culture and heritage. We have the boundaries of just one planet that, if we exploit it and we go beyond certain thresholds, it will come back and affect our economies. But how do we get beyond this short-term thinking and focus on economic value to broaden the value argument? Randall, I'm looking at you. I don't know if this is something you want to comment on.
That's interesting because, just by thinking about the ocean, and you mentioned economy and tied to the ocean, then you have the blue economy. And then the moment you throw out that term blue economy, and people start to think about the money that's coming from it. But it's mostly in terms of maritime business. Nobody's thinking about the environmental opportunities or the benefits or the ecological benefits that are coming from the ocean. Mm-hmm. In terms of coastal protection for that coastal community that is set to lose their home because the mangroves have been cut or they've been degraded, so the wave action can come and wash their homes away. Most people are not thinking about the value of, let's say, tourism, again, which communities rely upon. But then when you detach the money bit, which is hard to do most of the times, and you check the assets that are coming from, let's say, a particular ocean, let's take, for instance, the Western Indian Ocean, and you look at reports like the Ocean Economy Report, and they quantify the assets coming from the ocean as up to $300 billion. That is when the report came out. Right now, it could be more, it could be less, depending on how the systems have degraded or how their status is. So, for communities, it's the value that they put on the ocean, like you've mentioned, the cultural value, and then the value in terms of the food, specifically the food. If they go out there and catch a lot of fish, then it's food for them on the table. But most times when we go out to the field and you interact with communities and you see this lady who's gone out to, say, glean for octopus, and she's had nothing after spending, let's say, 8 hours out in the sun, and the only thing they can take back home a handful of clam shells, that they're going to boil for their children. Then you start to realize, hey, the value that can be placed on the ocean is more of living. It's life for these communities. If you take that away from them, then you've taken their life away. That's why it's so important for all of us to get connected to the ocean, to know that we are connected. If you pollute the ocean, throw things in the water, and there's effluence and that kind of thing, and you lose marine life, the people who suffer, it's not someone who's 1,000 miles away first. It's the community member who's, depending on that. So that's the value, Produces food for you, so there's food security that's touched upon, and that's part of the SDGs. And then there's a social protection, environmental protection as well. Yeah. Then in addition, of course, to the money bit.
Thanks, Randall. I see Matt nodding as well, and Natalia, over to you. What do you think about this? Value. What value do you attach, and
To me,
groups you interact with on?
To me, and to quote my sister, Alvania, the ocean is my home. Literally, the ocean is my backyard. Seychelles is only 1% land and 99% water. In ocean size, Seychelles is the same size as Germany. It's humongous in water size, and it's very difficult to put a value to that. Because it's not, just like you said, it's not just a matter of taking a fish and then putting a dollar value to it. It has so many other things that are not spoken about. It has so much emotional value, especially to me. So much emotional value, so much cultural heritage, so many other things that are not taken into account when we speak about economic value. And it's very, very hard to put a monetary value to that. And with valuing our ocean and trying to go towards that direction, I think policies, regulations, and laws also have to come into place, because if we find the value of the ocean and it becomes very attractive to people, it's just going to be another case of the destruction of the Amazons, for example. It's just going to be people exploiting the ocean. So I think once we know the value of it and what it possesses, there should also be fines and consequences if somebody destroys it. There should be consequences to it, or else it's just going to be more exploitation. And as Mr. Rendell said, the blue economy is not just exploiting or using the ocean's resources. It's also protecting and preserving. It needs to be a 50-50. There needs to be a balance. It can't go one way. It can't be just taking what the ocean has. We're not here on this planet to just take and take and take. We're here to preserve it. We're part of this planet. We should live as if we're part of this planet, not as if we have a plan B or we have somewhere else to go. People talk about going to Mars and finding life there, but why should we even think of doing that when we have this planet, and we have a beautiful planet, and we have so many intellectual and intelligent minds to protect it? And I think that we should do whatever we can to protect the one that we have now, and not think about, oh, we'll ruin this one and then we'll have another one. No, I think we should preserve this one, and we should all work together. That's my fellow Seychellois.
I don't know who that was. Hello. There's someone else there. Great, thank you. That's very passionate, and yeah, totally agree. I mean, value is more than just economic value, and I do sometimes, not to put my own personal take on it, I do sometimes wonder if that's happening sufficiently. I mean, we have, just even the value we put on our own health and well-being. How good do you feel when you go for a swim in the sea and the sea is nice and it's a nice day? And you can't put a value on that, the well-being benefit that you get from that. So, and if the pandemic's taught us anything, it's about this innate need we have to connect with nature, and connecting with the ocean is a crucial part of that. So we have 1 minute left. Quick roundtable of the three speakers, starting with you, Matt. What's the final takeaway message you'd like to leave the audience today, in 3 words or more?
In 3 words,
Yeah.
the Indian Ocean.
No, it can be more.
The Indian Ocean has great potential. We've got some serious challenges. We've talked about that those challenges give us opportunities, and the Indian Ocean can live more than sustainable.
Great, thank you. Randall?
I would say we can only realize the full potential and the importance of the ocean if we start to value it more. Similar to that community member who's living by it, then we should feel more connected just by realizing that the ocean it's basically the lung of this earth. So let's think about taking care of it, not just dumping into it and taking away from it.
Thank you. Natalia?
I think we should all work together. We should all put our hands together because l'union fait la force, union is strength, and we should all work towards a better future, a better ocean, a cleaner ocean, a healthier ocean. Merci beaucoup, especially tout ban Cécile qui vegete. Merci.
Great. Thank you very much. I invite you both to sit back in your seats.
Thank you.
And a round of applause, please, for the next session. Thank you. Thank you, Matt. So the next session is called A Coastal Community Approach to Conservation and Social Change. You'll hear from 3 inspiring projects that protect the ocean and support communities and build blue economies or help build it. And time permitting, we hope to take some questions from the audience as well. So firstly, we have Helena Sims to discuss the Seychelles Marine Spatial Plan Initiative. Helena will join via video link. Hi, Helena. Welcome.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, clear, Helena. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Do you allow me to share my screen? and to balance the ecological, the social, and economic objectives of the country. And these are representatives from civil society, parastatals, government, and so on, in private sector. In 2014, before the MSP started, guiding principles were discussed, and they lay the foundation for the marine spatial planning in the country, considering the 50 years of experience that the Seychelles had before the MSP started. Seychelles was actually the first country in the Western Indian Ocean to designate a marine protected area, which was the Setan Marine National Park. So considering that 50 years of experience and also looking at international best practice, other countries around the world, and adapting that to a small island developing state context, and developing these guiding principles with the people of Seychelles, because the plan is for the Seychelles, so that they could define what they wanted to see the plan to address and how. Some of the main outputs of the MSP include a marine spatial plan with a zoning design for a 30% marine protection goal, with each of those zones having allowable activities that guide what you can and cannot do in each zone, management considerations, and priorities for implementation. We also have planning tools with spatial data catalogs and an MSP atlas that will be published this year. And also a marine spatial plan policy, which is the first for the country. The MSP initiative is governed by an evidence-based decision-making framework with over 100 representatives across 2 committees, an executive committee and a steering committee, and 7 technical working groups. We also have public open workshops or open houses across all 3 main islands of the Seychelles. We hold bilateral consultations and also brief the members of the National Assembly and the Cabinet of Ministers before a decision is made. As mentioned previously, one of the outputs of the Seychelles is the Marine Spatial Plan Data Catalog, which we have over 100 data layers already in the data catalog. And this is based on best available data nationally, regionally, but also internationally. The data is attributed to planning unit grids. These are 1 kilometer square or 50 kilometer square grids, depending on the depth. And what this means is in future, the data can be updated and new analyses can be conducted about the economic contribution, for example, of fisheries to the blue economy and so on. The repository for the data catalog remains the Ministry for Environment, the GIS department of the Ministry for Environment. There have been over 200 stakeholder consultations in the Seychelles to reach the final zoning design. And this has occurred over a span of 6 years. All the meetings are minuted and can be found on the MSP website, saymsp.com. And the MSP process is actually one of the most stakeholder-intensive consultative processes in the history of our country. The zoning framework has 3 zones, with a high biodiversity protection zone that's equivalent to no human extraction and no seabed alteration, a medium biodiversity and protection and sustainable use zone, which allows for some extractive activities, but having sustainability addressed through management plans. And then finally, zone 3 is a multiple use zone. Zone 1 and 2 combined are designated marine protection areas, and zone 3 is everywhere else. As a reminder, the Marine Spatial Plan is for the entire exclusive economic zone of the Seychelles. These are the areas that were gazetted on the 26th of March, 2020, and meeting our fulfillment for the depth swap loan agreement of 30% protection by 2020. We have 13 new marine protection areas, 5 high biodiversity areas, which is the dark green areas, and 8 medium biodiversity sustainable use areas. These areas are already gazetted, and the zones will have their own allowable activities and management considerations. And sorry, as I mentioned earlier, implementation will start as of 2022. So we are now in a transition from planning to implementation phase, with steps to finalize the marine spatial plan, including Zone 3 management considerations. So we're also planning for the remaining 70% to address sustainability in those areas, for example, by considering electronic monitoring on industrial fisheries vessels, developing fishery aggregation device management plans, and so on. And we will then have an implementation plan for transitioning, with management frameworks being developed, management plans, regulations, monitoring, control, surveying plan. And finally, we also need to monitor the marine spatial plan itself to see that whether it's effective or not, with smart indicators and a review process that's established.
Helena,
And
I think
yes,
we're
this is my
literally the
last
last. Okay, excellent. Thank you. Sorry to
Sorry,
interrupt.
yes, I have my timer on. Yes, sorry. So this is the last slide in that these are the expected outcomes by 2025. We have the MSP, is comprehensive multi-sector plan that's implemented, that should read 2022 onwards, sorry, and with effective management across the marine protection areas and indicators for implementation. Thank you very much. Most welcome to send us any questions you have. Here are our contact details, and welcome to visit our website too for further information. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Helena. Great. So we heard a marine spatial planning perspective from the Seychelles. Now we welcome back Randall to speak about Blue Ventures in East Africa and the project known as Tahiri Honko. So over to you, Randall.
Thank you. Thank you again, Tanzid. It's good to be back here again. Such a full house. So I'm here to tell you a story, and it's about a grassroots movement that's happening here in the Indian Ocean. It's a story about the ocean we want, and it's led by the people who live by and depend on the ocean for for food, for culture, and it's a revolution that it's being led by communities, and it's helping communities to adapt and to respond to the climate crisis, which is an emergency that we're all looking at right now. Oh, sorry. Right. So it's not a story about gloom. I'm not a prophet of doom. I'm a storyteller, and I love telling stories of hope. And what the story is about is we would like to show you, or rather tell you, how communities are working to safeguard the ocean, to secure their rights to manage their resources, such as mangroves, coral reefs, seagrasses, and fisheries, which are the vital elements. My name is Randall Mabwa, again, and I am a science communicator, marine biologist with Blue Ventures Conservation. Now, in Kenya, where I'm from, and the tropics, East Africa, the Western Indian Ocean, the ocean is full of marine life, full of tropical life, fish, seagrasses, mangroves, and the communities depend a lot on these resources for food, for income, part of their culture, their religion. It's their everyday life as they know it. Now, for the past decade, my organization has worked to support communities to safeguard the ocean, so that they can focus on improving their livelihoods. Now, that's a mangrove, for those who've not seen mangrove forests. And these are vital forests, important to the globe, basically referred to as lungs of our Earth. They help sequester carbon, rather absorb carbon from the atmosphere. They absorb over 5 times more than other ecosystems, including terrestrial ecosystems, terrestrial forests. Now, communities depend on these forests for fish, because they act as nurseries. Now, the communities that actually conserve these forests along the tropics also do that under what you refer to as a locally marine managed area. It's basically a community-led conservation area. That means the community is still at the top, working together with NGOs, scientists, policymakers, governments to conserve and protect and preserve the resources from the ocean. And they get to benefit not only from the fisheries, but also from other income-generating activities, such as beekeeping. And here, what I'd like to say is there's a sweet taste of mangroves, you know, because that's bees from hives that grow in the mangroves. Malesh would know. I think he's tested honey from there. Yeah. Now, the story about conserving mangroves and getting communities to take part in conservation was not always an easy process. It's because communities have always depended on these resources. To an extent, yes, they have used, they have conserved these ecosystems, but there are practices that are degrading these systems, you know, like cutting down mangrove forests, like you can see in the picture there, to make fuel, or rather charcoal. Now, this is because of a lack of an option. For us who live in towns, for us who lives in town, it's easier for us to actually question why they would do this. It's because they don't have an alternative, right? Now, we've got them, we've got them to change that through education and awareness purposes, where they have actually seen the need to stop cutting down mangrove forests, and they've moved away from that into growing sustainable biofuel, fast-growing trees, and moved ahead to reforest areas through mangrove restoration and reforestation initiatives. So the communities actually realized by reforesting areas that were previously degraded, they started to realize that they caught more fish. Whereas in areas that mangroves were deforested, they were not catching as much fish, you know? So they started to see the need and the value in conserving these areas because it offered a direct benefit, and in terms of coastal protection as well. And then there's that aspect of the blue economy as well, where some communities, especially the ones that are in Madagascar, through the Tahiri Honko project, and Tahiri Honko is Malagasy for preserve the mangroves, they have an option to earn money, income, from the sale of carbon credits. Yeah, that's blue economy. I won't go into the math of that. It will bore you to death. But there are those experts who can do that. So from the sale of carbon credits, the communities are able to earn an income to fund various social developmental projects, fund for education, fund for healthcare. And in addition to that, like I mentioned earlier on, fisheries that they benefit from and that depend on for the rest of their lives. Now, we are starting to see this kind of revolution take part through the Indian Ocean, where communities are securing their rights to manage the water and the ocean spaces that they depend upon. And they're engaging everybody in the community, from men to youth to women, you know, empowering marginalized people so that they can actually take charge and conserve their ocean resources. And we can play a part in this process, you know, as governments, as policy makers, as scientists. Let's not work in silos. Let's come together. Let's work with the communities to conserve the ocean and also safeguard and secure the rights of communities. Thank you. I'll take your questions later. Yes.
We'll have time for questions. Thank you for staying to time as well, Randall. Really appreciate it. Next, we have Dr. Flower Masuya. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. She is the founder and chairperson of the Zanzibar Seaweed Cluster Initiative. I don't know if you've been to Zanzibar before. I have. It's an absolutely wonderful place. So I'm really looking forward to finding out more from Dr. Flower about the work that they're doing, primarily women, in producing, processing, and selling commercial products from seaweed. So, Dr. Flower, over to you, and welcome.
Thank you very much for the introduction. So good afternoon, good evening to you. My name is Flower Msuya. I'm a freelance researcher, and I've been doing research for more than 30 years, focusing on different aspects of seaweed farming. As you heard, I'm also the founder and chairperson of the Zanzibar Seaweed Cluster Initiative. The Zanzibar Seaweed Cluster Initiative is formulated in what we call a triple helix model. Triple helix means we have three pillars of operation, three pillars of leadership in the cluster initiative. So the first pillar is business. When we talk of business, we mean small-scale processors, sellers of seaweeds, buyers and exporters of seaweed. So everyone involved in the seaweed business would be in the business pillar. The second pillar is government. We are working very closely with the government, the ministries and the departments that are responsible with the seaweed farming. For example, in the leadership is also triple helix, which means we have people from the government who are leaders in the cluster initiative. And the third pillar is academia, that is research. Research is conducted by research institutions, by universities. All these feed into the seaweed cluster initiative. And here up here is our website. You can visit our website and see some activities that we are conducting. But let us ask our questions. Why the cluster initiative? We started the Zanzibar Seaweed Cluster Initiative to innovate the seaweed industry. Since we started farming seaweed in 1989, it's a long time, what has been happening is just the farmers would farm the seaweed, they would dry it, and then they would sell to the buyers who export the seaweed. And the farming methods were the same kind of farming method over and over again. So we thought it's good to innovate the industry so that we can make it more sustainable. The ZASCI started in 2006. That's when we started. And we started with only one group of farmers which had 21 members. So you can see here on the left, this is the people we started with. So we started to tell them about farming seaweed in deeper water areas, making seaweed, things that they were not doing before. So it was something new that came to them. You can see even the kind of packaging we had at the time. This is the first seaweed soap. So that's the packaging we had. So from 2006, now we have 3,700 farmers who are members of the seaweed cluster. And these are the ones that we have reached directly. We have also created more than 500 small-scale processors. And I've talked of creation because before the seaweed farming, the seaweed cluster started, there were no seaweed products at all in Zanzibar. And the innovative farming methods were not there yet. So we created these 500 plus small-scale processors. And they operate from 28 groups. So you can see for now, we have all these products here, food and cosmetic products, and the packaging is much better compared to what we had at the time. So let us look at the benefits of farming. We are talking about farming technologies, and we are talking about benefits to the environment for now. So we are talking about benefits of farming. When you look at the farmers when they farm in the shallow water areas, like the photo on the left bottom, they go to and fro the farms, and they move around the farms, tending their farms. So this way, you find that they are trampling on the existing plants and animals, sessile animals. So they are actually impacting the environment because these plants and animals are being trampled upon and this is an impact to the environment. But we are also seeing that we had and pests caused by climate change, so it was important to innovate on the farming technology. Also, when you look at this shallow water farm here, the farmers use pegs, wooden pegs, to stretch lines to make a seaweed farm. So it means they are cutting trees to get the wooden pegs. And this is also impact to the environment. But when they start farming the deep waters, like the photo you see here, most of the work is done on the boats. So it means that only few people would dive to anchor the rafts, mostly men, but most of the work is done on the boat. It means that there's less trampling, there's less impact to the environment. And again, with the deep water rafts farming methods, they don't need the wooden pegs. So there's no cutting trees to get wooden pegs for farming the seaweed. So it's also positive to the environment. When we talk about value addition technologies, the value addition technologies that we have developed, making the farmers produce seaweed products, it means that we have actually very tremendously improved their livelihoods. So they have the money. If they have the money, then they may not use firewood. Instead of cutting trees to use firewood, they would use charcoal that is not made from wood, and they would use gas. There's a lot of gas around in the country. Those who have more money, they can even use electricity. So this way, the people do not cut wood for firewood or for charcoal. And this is also positive to the environment. When we look at social cultural benefits, we see that the women have money. They have the power of money. It means that they can buy the things they need at home, food, clothing, everything. So their status in the community has changed. They are being looked at as people who can contribute to the economy of the family. So the society looks at them in a different manner now. And the women also are given leadership positions in the society because of going out, selling products, meeting with the other people. So they have been given this status in the community. And they become also trainers of other farmers, of other processors. For example, this photo here, bottom on the right, this one is a farmer from Zanzibar who is training the people in Kenya. So it means that they have also become trainers of other people. I have to put the next slide. What is happening? Okay. Let us now look at if we can expand, we can scale up the activities that we are using. We are doing this cluster, and what is our vision in the future. The deep water farming methods that we have developed, they are applicable to the Western Indian Ocean region. They are relevant there and they can be used. For example, the rafts, these wooden bamboo rafts, they are already being used in places like Kenya, and the tubular net. This is one of the methods that we developed to farm in the deep water areas. This is already being used in Madagascar. So it means that what we have can be replicated in other areas. And I'm saying that Africa really needs this kind of innovation. Innovation in the farming, innovation in the value that we will have our environment, which is protected, and also we have the social and cultural aspects. And we have these happy farmers who can actually, who continue to become our advocates for the seaweed industry. And one notable thing that we have also done is that we have started the Seaweed Day of the Zanzibar Seaweed Cluster Initiative on 23rd July of each year. So if you have the time, come to Zanzibar and join us on the 23rd July this year. We will be having our Seaweed Day. So all these activities are what we can scale up, we can expand and use in the whole of the Western Indian Ocean, and also throughout Africa that needs this kind of farming and innovative activities. Thank you very much for your attention.
Excellent. Great. Thank you very much, Dr. Flower. And Randall, if I could invite you back on the stage. We have a few minutes left for Q&A with the audience. So we heard some 3 really inspiring stories. Has anyone got any questions for our speakers? Okay, well, maybe I've got one for you, Randall, actually. So how can this be scaled up, all the good work that you're doing? Why isn't this the norm?
I would say I'll start with the last end. It's not the norm because a lot of people don't know about the projects that are actually happening in the ocean space. So number one, raising awareness through environmental education, ocean education is the first step. Now, number two, if more people get to know what's happening, then let's go now to the communities. Through peer learning, by focusing on one community, you can be able to have change agents. And change agents are basically people who've taken up the action to safeguard the ocean and conserve it. Now, by using them as peers, they can be able to champion for change in society and to other communities that are going to take up, what's the word? The projects, let's say projects. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Helena, same question for you, actually. You're doing some great work in the Seychelles. How can this be scaled up in your experience elsewhere in the region? Yeah.
Thank you very much. As we all know, or we all should know, we are one ocean. So planning for the Seychelles EZ is important and it's amazing. But, fish don't understand these boundaries and they move, there's connectivity. So it's very important to be able to replicate this at the scale of the Western Indian Ocean, which is what we are trying to do. We are currently working on a Leo MSP strategy, which is very important to address these transboundary and migratory species and ensure that whatever efforts, for example, the Seychelles is working on, once those species are leaving the Seychelles waters, that protection and sustainability is ensured throughout their migratory paths, for example. Thank you.
Thank you, Helena. And last one, just for you. Oh, actually, we have someone from the audience asking a question as well. A lady there.
And in terms of looking at compliance and enforcement in such a large area that the Seychelles covers, let alone in terms of international waters as well, and what steps have been taken in terms of negotiations in relation to that?
Helena, did you catch all of that question?
I think most of it. So with regards to enforcement and compliance for these large-scale marine protection areas, indeed, they're very new, they're innovative. We had very small-scale protected areas closer to the coasts. So anyway, a short answer is planning for implementation was at the beginning on the onset and throughout the planning of the MSP. We've been consulting with the Seychelles Coast Guards and Defense Forces. If I had time, I'd pull up the map again, but what you saw were large areas as opposed to scattered small areas across the EZ. That addresses your feasibility, financial sustainability also, straight lines to the boundaries of our EZ. There's particular positioning of the areas in context to the distance from radar stations. Obviously, it is most likely that it will also be a phased implementation with multiple layers from passive to active management, and also a hybrid of using technologies, satellite technologies, with on-the-ground deployment of vessels, for example, and then combined, with treaties that we have signed, port states measures using VMS and AIS. We do have the Regional Coordination Center for 10 countries in the Western Indian Ocean in the Seychelles that's tracking all these vessel movements. Anyway, there's not one answer. It's a combination of multiple factors. And we have been planning not only for biodiversity, but also considering the feasibility for implementation of these areas. Last point is often what we see, other than financing is most often a limiting factor, but often the next limiting factor is coordination. And we're working very hard to address coordination through a new governance mechanism for where the Marine Spatial Plan of Seychelles will sit. Thanks.
Thank you, Helena. Kylie, we have the audience is kind of waking up. Do we have time to squeeze in a few more questions? Yeah. Gentleman there from Malish, and then lady over there, Marina.
Thank you. My question is, okay, I'm living in Comoros, which is a small island next to Seychelles, a nice, beautiful place, come one day. But my question is that my mom, she's coming from Uganda, while we know that there is a big lake, Victoria. And it's supposed to have, I don't know, petrol or gas, and there is even 2 or 3 sisters went to France last time to go to see the parliament for trying to stop to take gas out of petrol because this could affect. There are also people living, a lot of people living around these places with the lakes, like Tanganyika, can you briefly just tell me something that there are people living there, then they are gaining their life, they are gaining their food from the lakes. Just if you can just pass through this question. Thanks very much.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
So who'd like to take that question on? If I could summarize, it's to do with people's livelihoods dependent on lakes in Uganda, food, and then how do you kind of balance what you spend money on, kind of food or fuel? Randall?
I mean, I would tie that to a similar situation where communities who live by the ocean, similar to communities who living by the lake, depending on a particular resource. So if the focus is on extractives, which is now the gas and the oil you're talking about, if that's the case, before extracting these commodities, so to speak, there's a need to actually involve the communities, look at the environmental trade-off, and sometimes, rather, there's no need, in my opinion, to go straight for the extractives at the expense of people's lives, because the whole world is speaking about Vision 2030, right? The UAE is speaking about Vision 2071, right? Moving into a cleaner, greener future. Now, if that's the case, then how about governments start looking at development from a cleaner standpoint than just going for, the old type energy, and there's change and it can be done. All we need is to think about the lives of people that we are going to affect when we start to develop or before we develop.
Excellent. So the role of government is crucial there. Marina, we are running out of time. Quick question? Yeah. Go on, I'll let you have one quick. Go on.
Hello, can you hear me? So I have a question actually for Elena. You mentioned, Elena, that how the MSP process was one of the enablers for the debt swaps and the loan, sustainability-related loans in Seychelles. I was just wondering, you mentioned the different milestones you had to meet. How did this actually work in relation to what potentially return of investment was expected as part of this partnership? I just wanted to know how the MSP side of things can work hand in hand with what investors and the finance world kind of expects, I suppose, in a short term or mid term.
Great question.
Thank you. Thank you. The MSP is an output of the debt swap restructuring. Okay, so the debt swap restructuring, and basically it's like impact investment where there were investors willing to support Seychelles, but with expecting to see an output, which is 30% marine protections. So the loan agreements had already been signed and finalized in 2016. And basically, the funds had already been flowing. And the milestones, the way it was written, is if we didn't meet it, the Seychelles would default on the loan and have to pay back a certain amount of funds to those investors, basically. So that's one answer. And then quickly, the way the Seychelles Conservation and Adaptation Trust is set up, it's a standalone trust with its own board, designed to be very transparent in the light that it would attract future potential investors because of the mechanisms in which the funds are handled in a very transparent way and dispersed. And this is how then, for example, when the first blue bonds was finalized, this attracted the investors to use SICAD for the grant component. And we're working on new mechanisms to further grow the fund. So it's about the investors wanting to see a conservation outcome, and you just need to be able to show that for that drive to raise the funds. Thank you.
Excellent. So really good food for thought there. So I'd like to thank everybody, Helena, Dr. Flower and Randall, and the audience for some excellent questions as well. So thank you, and that's the end of this session. We are running a bit behind time, but we'll be able to catch up hopefully as well. So the next session is called Our Ocean, Our People, Our Future. And we have on stage, I'd like to welcome Dr. Aisha Bilker, who's a research advisor with the National Archives and Library from the Ministry of Presidential Affairs of the UAE, and Ayla Bajwa, who's the head of sustainability and impact at DP World. If you could please join me on stage. Welcome. Excellent. Thank you, ladies, for joining. So this is, it's the Indian Oceans are really significant in our past and will continue to shape the future for communities, countries, and trade. Dr. Aisha, you have a really fascinating background. I'd love to hear a bit more about you and the importance of the Indian Ocean over time, what it's meant for the culture and heritage of the UAE, and the UAE's relationship with Africa, which many people might not know about.
I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me, and I'm really honored to share some aspects of my personal memory and share with you that I missed being born in Generation X by 50 days. So that, I think, put me a little bit on the golden days of Dubai. I was born particularly in 1959, and Dubai at that time was such a quiet place. If you can imagine the ocean, and today people talked about the ocean very passionately, and I thank you for your interest, not only in the past, but also the future. If you look at the ocean as a heart, then you look at the Gulf of Oman as a vessel, and then you look at the Creek of Dubai as a small vein in that heart, and look outside what that little vein have done. The whole world is here today, and we're honored to have everybody here. Can you imagine what if we have that ocean? You have just a small line, which is the creek. All this energy came from that. I was born on the creek. It was my backyard. Every day we go to school, we come back, we go fish. We do our homework and we go fish. And then you see all the vessels coming in from Africa and from India. And I could smell the ocean. You could hear the little oars going on back and forth. Before, of course, as you well know, there were no these motorized boats. People used to row between there and Dubai. And you could hear people asking for one passenger going to Mombasa, one passenger going to to Bombay, one passenger going to Kerala. They're calling for people to fill in the ships that will sail. And the ships came in and brought us two things that I'm very proud of today. They brought us the colors of Africa. And these colors are still in my mind. When I see the colors, I see the rainbow and I see the diversity of people. Because it wasn't just water, it was the fluidity of water that taught us tolerance, taught us to respect other people, taught us to live in the other. And I remember very well my mother, when the boats come in, they send us with food to the gentlemen on the ship, because she said, they're coming from a long journey. Go and take these oranges, we share with them what we have. And then the other thing is, I look at the ocean and the sea and the creek as something that brought us the outside world, because imagine there were no planes that brought us the world view of outside. So Africa and India were for us the Boeing, if you will, because all the wood come in here and the engineers come with that to build the ships that we go dive with, that we go fish with, that we transfer and transport ourselves from place to place. So they were the connectors of us in the ocean, the fluidity of that. People who go diving, a lot of times they die in the ocean. So for us as Muslims, we bury them. It's considered their graveyard. Their tears, their blood and sweat is in this body of water. And as you will know today, we know that water has memory. If we examine the memory of this water, and now I'm very passionate about collecting the stories of the ocean and people who have gone. We see them, they brought us from Africa lots of songs. They brought us the tradition. Today you hear the drum. It is part of our culture. It's part of the music that you hear here. It is the same tradition. We are the same people separated by bodies of water. And we had access to it, going back and forth whenever we wanted. And it's a fascinating place when you think about our culture. Now, if I serve you Arabic coffee, our traditional coffee, it will be in a small cup and it will be a small amount. And that's because people always preserved the water. It's not because they're stingy or they're parsimonious, it is because they have to share the value. There are people who are well-to-do in the community, and there are people who are less fortunate and don't have money. So when you receive a guest, you serve them a little amount that everybody can afford. And with that, you share a value that everybody can welcome their guest and treat them with the respect and the hospitality that they deserve. And the other reason why they serve coffee a little bit is because also water, they have to go and fetch it from far places and bring it to the homes. And people don't want to make a big flask or a thermos of coffee and then it goes to waste. So it is really very important that even if you look at the camel in the desert, the camel, people are preoccupied with the water. They call camels the ship of the desert because they imagine it going fluidly, taking them from place to place. They look at the dunes as water. Can you imagine in places where resources are very scarce, people are very generous, and all of that, they are connected by waters. Even when they introduced the cars, the caravan routes used to go from one well of water to the next in the desert because that's how people survive. If they get stuck without water, they cannot survive in the desert. And the roads today are based on that. So the memory of the land here is based on wells of water. If you look at Al-Ahbab, Al-Awir, these are all names of water wells. Today they live with us. Even Barsha, even all the places here, Jumeirah, every place that had water well had a specific name. People navigate by them. So water is really something we lived by. And I remember the drums that we hear, if I may, I don't know what I'm doing for time.
This is great. I'm very happy to keep going. We'll...
Because we listen to the music, and it is the African music that came with these ships that sustained the mental state of people here. Imagine in the 1930s when there was a decline in pearl diving. People were really depressed. In the United States, people were singing the blues. In here, people were singing, and Naham used to be a specialized person that goes on board of diving ships, and they used to bring the motivation of people up. That diver usually have a huge lung capacity because they have to breathe like Pavarotti when they carry on a deep note. And he's the captain of the ship. He will see them a little bit down. He will tell him, I think they miss their children and their wives, so sing this song for them. And then that's uplifting. Then this singer again will sing for them to help them carry on with the daily chores, bringing up the sail, going down to dive, pulling somebody up. So there are so many specialized, there's a specialized person who goes in there. So during the pearl diving and the decline of pearl diving, it was African music that kept people sane. Because when they came here, you hear the drums, the ships come from Africa, they bring new lyrics, they bring new music, and with that kept and sustained that art. And that's what kept people intact. Because some Africans, even when they were given, they came here and they have the choice. They were the seamen on board of these ships that went to Africa. They chose not to look for their families and to live and to go back. They chose this to be their place because they saw from this point forward is their future and the future for their children. And I'm very proud to be a member of that community because we exist here based on that relationship that this Dubai, this place, the UAE had with Africa. And the story goes on way back to the times of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, when he first introduced Islam, and he was really oppressed by his own tribe. He sent the few believers to Abyssinia, which is Ethiopia, and he said to them, go and hide there until it is a good time for you to come back, because I've heard they have a wise and a just king. And that means there is respect for Africa that we held from that time and even beyond that. So the story of it, whether you look at it from a historical point of view or you look at it from a sociocultural point of view, it's like if you have a relative, you separate from them. When you see them, you're happy to see them. When you're not with them, you are preoccupied with them. You care about them because even to this day, the special aids, God forbid, should there be any natural disaster or anything, the UAE comes to help and to aid those in need. So that relationship is a sustainable one. It is there to be here, and events like this will keep it going.
Thank you so much, Dr. Aisha, for your inspiring story, I guess, and the history and the rich cultural kind of connections that the ocean has brought together with the UAE. And we're all obviously here in Dubai today, which is, I don't know how many of you have been around to see the Museum for the Future. I don't know if you've seen that building. And thinking about the future as well, you know, it's interesting you talked about the Dubai Creek and the boats there. And even today you can go down to the creek and see these old tugboats and all the goods that they're bringing in. And it's, you know, my kids are constantly like inspired by this and thinking, what's in that boat, Daddy? Can we go in there? I want to go to see where that boat goes. And then obviously we have pretty sophisticated infrastructure, like in Jebel Ali, we have a free zone with one of the biggest ports in the world. And that's a nice segue as well, because DP World is a homegrown company. And Isla represents this as head of sustainability DP World, and they have ports around the world, including in Africa, I believe, as well. So Isla, I'd like to hear from you. We've heard about this history, now the future in terms of the role of DP World when it comes to sustainability and the opportunity that you see from how that helps your business by being reliant on the ocean.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's very difficult to follow Dr. Aisha's
You need a mic.
introduction.
Have you got? I think you have a mic next to you, Aisha.
Is this working? Yeah. So thank you so much, Dr. Aisha, for that inspiring introduction. So it's interesting. DP World, yes, is a very large global organization, homegrown, founded in the UAE, founded in Dubai. Our first project was, Mina Rashid, then moved on to Jebel Ali Port. But the foundations of it and the ethos of it is very aligned with what you're sharing. So the idea of enabling trade is really our roots as an organization. And so, and if you visit our DP World Pavilion, you'll see that actually we are very much a part of UAE's history, very much mirroring what you are sharing, but we have essentially made a global business out of it. And you used a word, I believe, flow. And that's really how, even within our business language, we say we are in the business of flow, keeping things moving. And so we owe a lot to the oceans. We owe a lot to the Indian Ocean. So just we have 13 ports just along the Indian Ocean coastline. So we have 5 ports in India. We have a very large port in Pakistan. We, of course, have our Jebel Ali port. Egypt, we just along the Suez Canal, and also Mozambique. And I'm talking about just in terms of our dependence of the Indian Ocean. And so as a business, historically, we have been a ports and terminals operator, so we owe a great deal to the coastal areas of this planet, and so so we have developed essentially our sustainability strategy around that. So our sustainability strategy is something we called our world, our future framework, and our world reflects how we run a responsible business, and we look at certain business priorities and ensure that we are responsibly managing those business priorities from a security perspective, from a people management perspective, and then, of course, a climate change and ethics perspective. And then our future reflects how we want to leave the world behind. What is our legacy as a business? And so we have identified 3 legacy pillars: oceans, education, and women. And so we really had to deep dive into how do we plan to approach oceans if we really want to make create a sustainable impact. And so we have identified 3 legs under our dedication towards the oceans. So education around the oceans, coastal cleanup, so ensuring a clean ocean, with a focus on plastics, and then restoration, and looking at restoration from a mangroves perspective, and with a focus on mangroves and coastal reefs, but also tying it to our decarbonization strategy and furthering the conversation and studies and science around blue carbons, and partnering. For us, partnership is key. So partnering with subject matter experts, with scientists, with biologists, and see how do we support climate change through the protection of our oceans and through the protection of marine biodiversity, and so that's sort of our that's where we have laid our focus in terms of oceans, but when we look at local level projects, we do look at heritage. So one of the large studies we have partnered with with the Blue Marine Foundation is a feasibility study on oyster restoration in the UAE, and looking at the preservation of oysters to support the marine biodiversity within the UAE. And so always sort of taking it back to our heritage and our roots, but with a spin, with a futuristic lens. So nature-based solutions are a huge way in which we approach coastal restoration. So, and we can get into that a little more later on in the discussion, but investing in innovations that actually look at coastal reefs, at mangroves, and then again going back to sort of building the science and the methodology, or supporting the methodology around blue carbon and the measurement of that, and tying it into the climate change conversation. But when you look at our projects locally, they really do go back to the roots of our history and our heritage, but with the lens of the future.
You mentioned the oysters. I mean, I don't know if you've tried them. They're in Fujairah in the Eastern Emirates here. They're really delicious. Was it Dibba Bay oysters? Is it they're the ones who have like a local grown company that's actually building oyster reefs out in the East Coast? You don't normally get them here, but they are actually thriving in the warmer waters. They grow more quickly. So anyway, I heard that on the radio one day. I just thought it was an interesting story of generating new sources of food and income here from the oceans. Thanks, Isla. One thing you mentioned before was you've been nominated, you provided funding towards the Earthshot Prize. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Earthshot Prize, but Prince William has set this prize up as a way of dealing with some of the biggest problems that the planet is facing when it comes to environment, marine conservation, climate change. So can you explain a bit more about why, what drove that decision by DP World to support that?
So strategically, we see a strong link between sustainability and innovation, where we really do believe the most sustainable way to address the world's largest challenges is really looking at nature-based solutions and innovation and seeing how we can support that. The Earthshot Prize provided a great and effective platform for us to connect with these sorts of innovations. So yes, we're a partner of the Royal Foundation, and specifically looked at, we're a partner of the Royal Foundation, and we are principal founding partners along with Expo with the Earthshot Prize. And so not only did we submit some solutions for the Earthshot Prize to consider, but we also assessed, we also looked at the finalists and how we could support them. And so there were these two finalists that very much had created and developed solutions within, that fall very neatly within our sustainability ambitions. So one was, one entity's name is Living Seawalls, and the other entity's name is Coral Vita, both looking at how to grow marine. So with Coral Vita, particularly looking at coral reefs and how we can create sort of a human environment to incubate them and then actually implant them in coastal areas. So this is, for us, that's really important, assessing, what are the nature-based solutions that can help address our ambitions from a sustainability perspective, and then support those entrepreneurs. So it's not just providing funding, which is always a great thing to do and so important in the space of entrepreneurship, but also allowing them to use our areas and our areas of business and space and network and relationships to further scale their solutions. And so so with Coral Vita, we are looking to do a pilot in the UAE and replicating it worldwide in all the countries in which we operate.
Great, thank you. And with that, we're at the end of this session, so I'd like to thank you both immensely for all of your remarks. And Dr. Aisha, I could sit with you for hours, honestly, to hear these stories. I can imagine sitting in a majlis having coffee with you on this. And Aisha, of course, you're doing some amazing work there at DP World, so congratulations. Thank you, ladies. If you'd like to go back to your seats, and we'll... So now we have a short video to show you from the Expo. I should have showed this at the beginning, but I forgot. So now it's the time for the video. Thank you.
Water covers more than 2/3 of the Earth's surface. It is in every cell and on every breath. Without it, we would not exist. We know only too well the value of our most essential natural resource and the human cost and consequence of its growing scarcity. Around 1.1 billion people today lack access to water, and a total of 2.7 billion endure scarcity for at least 1 month of the year. This is not only an economic challenge, but a question of justice, fairness, and equity. How will we guarantee access to this life-sustaining resource we all need, no matter your place in the world? Just as all the waterways of the world are interconnected, so are our own responsibilities toward the management and preservation of this priceless resource. So let us rise together in this moment and work right now to deliver a cleaner, safer, healthier future for everyone.
Excellent. So, look, I can't begin to summarize all the amazing things we've heard and seen today. We had some great music, which was inspiring to start with, so thank you, Malish and the band, from traveling over from the Comoros. The ocean is absolutely crucial for our survival and this planet's survival, and we can't emphasize that enough. And that's what's brought you here today, to hear from these speakers about what's the future. We can create that future, and there are lots of positive, inspiring examples, whether you're the government setting policies, regulations, whether you're businesses trying to invest in the future and realizing the value it provides for your business, and that your dependence is on its survival as well. And whether you're organizations trying to do good things, working with communities to empower them to manage and own their resources. It's a huge area, it's a huge challenge, but I think there are solutions out there which I hope you can all take away and through your own networks try to scale these solutions up. So thank you again for your time. And our final part today is, last but not least, Adele, and who's written a specific poem for this. And thank you, Adele, for joining us. Over to you. And I think some music with it as well. Excellent. Thank you.
Take me to the water. I heard that is where my freedom is buried. Under the waves that dance with tears of my ancestors, tears that hold stories of pain. Stories seldom found in books, stories that are too painful to slip off our tongues. Stories of those whose wildest dreams I embody today. Of those who were forcefully dragged from their homes in musky, dirty boats because their skin was too rich. Of those who feel betrayed by the water. Stories of her, the water, and how she wept at their pieces and their blood. Stories of our beginning, stories of our truth. Take me back to the water, so I may ask her if she remembers. Does she recall the words that birthed our own? Does she recall the spices, the love? Does she recall the jealousy, the envy, the destruction? Could she hear the conversations about wicked plans being hatched to rip at us and who we are? Did she try to assemble the waves to help us Or did she think that she was connecting us and birthing a unity never before seen? Take me back to the water, so I may listen as she pleads her case and undresses me of my pride, so she may cleanse my memory that is drenched in darkness, so she may teach me how to be shapeless and fluid, tender and strong, so she may remind me of how she births life every day and holds it in the palms of her hands, so she may show me how the past, the present, and the future convene at her feet, so she may introduce me to who I am, who I could be, who we could be. Take me back to the water, so she may gift me my freedom. I heard it's buried there. Dancing with waves made up of my ancestors' tears. Take me back to the water, so she may gift me my freedom to live. Thank you.
That was beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. That was very, very moving and very inspiring. And you can see from the reaction that you got the biggest round of applause all day. We saved the best till last. So thank you, everyone, for attending. Thank you, Adele, and everybody who helped to organize. You're now free to go about your days. Thank you.